Welcome on in. This is the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, John McKechnie. That is Mario Puig. Today, we are going to be continuing our kind of deep dive series into certain offenses that things look a little bit different this year, and we're going to try to unpack and solve, how we're approaching these teams for fantasy. We're going to take a closer look at DK Metcalf today in the Pittsburgh Steelers. In particular, we've also run through a bunch of the NFC North. We did the Vikings last week in their backfield. In particular, we've done the Lions and the Bears, but Packers, we'll leave them be for now. So
Everything's same with them except the golden part. So just go listen to last year's episode.
yeah, I mean, if everyone was expecting us to just
Because
run
we
through
knew
it,
Jacobs would be good. You don't need like that part's. It's not going to say like take Marshawn Lloyd in the 9th.
it was
Safe.
vehemently saying don't do that, and we were right about that, and we were right about drafting as much Josh Jacobs as humanly possible. So yeah, that episode definitely still
Less Jacobs than last
evergreen.
year. That's the one caveat from last year's episode. Don't. It's not as good of a deal this time.
No, it's like early third or something like that, which is still probably going to be fine, but
It's fine.
you don't have to buy it in bulk the way that you did a year ago. But before we get into the Steelers, first of all, big shout out to our sponsors over at Circa. And please remember, if you're checking us out on the live stream or via podcast, go to rotowire.com. Use that code YouTube15. You can get 15% off any RotoWire product. Just right there, bottom of the screen. You can see it. But let's unpack a little bit of news. We saw some running back markets get shaken up a little bit this week. We've kind of loosely talked about some veterans that are still hanging around out there in free agency. A couple of landing spots have been settled. I think the splashiest of the two from this week was J.K. Dobbins landing with the Denver Broncos. And of course, everyone going into the draft was thinking whichever of these rookies goes to Denver is going to be, absolutely golden for fantasy. We saw R.J. Harvey get selected early in the draft, and as a result, his underdog ADP was like a late fourth, early fifth round. You definitely couldn't get him much cheaper than that. But the Dobbins addition to the equation has seemingly changed things, and it obviously has changed Dobbins' ADP as well. He was someone that was going in like the 15th round, and then in a slow draft that I'm participating in right now, he went towards the end of the 13th. So already about a 2-round bump for Dobbins. But I think the more interesting thing to jump into first would be this impact on Harvey, and how far do you see the discount diving to?
Well, it's tough to say because from my perspective, anyway, it's tough to say because I think Harvey's really, really, really good. And even though I'm a big fan of Dobbins, I don't think Harvey's getting pushed aside by almost any NFL running back. Like even if there's like a top 15 running back who just landed on the Broncos tomorrow, I still think Harvey's going to play a lot because he's just awesome in my opinion. And I think they're going to have to keep giving him the ball. It'll just be too tempting, even if these other guys are good. And if Harvey, let's see, so he used to be going in like the 13th round before the draft, and what was it? You said the late fourth is what he was going before.
Correct.
The news on Dobbins. So maybe we kind of split the difference there or something. Maybe whatever that would be. I don't know. 7th round, 8th round, something like that.
Yeah, I think now him and Kaleb Johnson will kind of be a toss up for people at ADP. I'm thinking, and Tony Pollard also.
Yeah, I'd still take Harvey, but I guess not to either talk too much about the Steelers or repeat something I've already said a million times. Yet again, I think Kaleb Johnson is going too high, so I would move him behind the other guys there. It's not so much that I'm like still racing to Harvey at that price because I'm not. It's more like a diversification viable pick, guy who, if you just need to take a running back, go ahead. It can be him. It's fine. But not a player that I'm particularly aiming for constantly.
Okay. All right. I think that checks out. And then, as far as the Dobbins end of this, he, had, I don't know. He's had such like a frustrating career. Obviously, like the talent is pretty much beyond question, but the injury history has kind of sapped him of some of that to an extent. You know, we saw him rush for almost 1,000 yards last year, ran for 9 touchdowns on top of it, but did miss some crucial time if you were a fantasy investor in his. You know, he was out from weeks 13 through week 16. So, you know, if you were counting on him for the playoffs, that was going to be a tough break for you. But, you know, where does his fit lie within this Denver backfield? You know, like what downs do we expect him to be on? Like, how much is he going to be spelling Harvey? You know, is this going to be a true, like, kind of 1A, 1B type of backfield, or like, are we seeing something where Dobbins maybe tops out at like 12, 13 carries a game?
I would expect Dobbins to generally not go over 12 carries in a game. Maybe he could. I certainly think he's good enough. I think uh, to quickly remember a guy, he's basically like the modern Garrison Hurst, where it's like, yeah, he's basically going to explode. I mean, like his like knee or something is going to explode every 2 years or something, and it's like difficult for him to get through seasons. But he's also got probably, if he has any luck at all, at some point in his future, he could have some really good seasons in him because he's extremely talented as a player. And you know, we're so high on Dobbins as a prospect because out of Ohio State, because like it wasn't just the speed and the explosiveness, even though he had a lot of that. If the injuries that he suffered took any of that away, he also was just so good, and he's like such a ferocious runner. You know, the motor, the instincts, the like short area, just kind of elusiveness. It's all there with him, and I don't think the production from last year is fluky at all. I think it was clearly the case that Dobbins was carrying that Chargers offense, and defenses started crashing down harder against the run. They couldn't really get anything going because Ladd was their only receiver, and he was, you know, in and out every 2 drives. So Dobbins was carrying that offense last year, and the Chargers exceeded expectations generally while he did that. And it's a thing where he's probably not good enough or available regularly enough to push Harvey to the bench, but also Harvey can't send Dobbins to the bench. Like, they're going to split some work, and it's going to be situationally difficult to anticipate. I think I saw some Denver area beat writer or ESPN guy or something was saying that he thinks Dobbins might take the passing down role. I'm honestly not familiar with Dobbins as a pass blocker. I don't know if that's the reasoning that he gave, but I think even though I love Dobbins, Harvey as a target out of the backfield is a compelling kind of presence for an offense. Like, I think they're going to do Alvin Kamara stuff with him as a pass catcher, and I think that takes priority over pass blocking. No, it doesn't take true priority over pass blocking, but Sean Payton, I don't think, cares as much about running back blitz pickup as a lot of other play callers, because he's more willing than those play callers to send that running back on a route.
Right, exactly. So, and I think that makes sense, especially with Denver's like skill position loadout, where there's a lot of promising pieces there, like Mims and Franklin. Now you add Evan Ingram to the equation, but on top of obviously Cortland Sutton. But you know, I
Peyton
think
loves to attack from as many like rep alignments on the field as possible. Like, he
bingo.
wants to have all of those guys going at once. And it's you know, it's going to be tough in redraft to get Dobbins's and Harvey's best weeks right every time. You almost might want to kind of corner yourself into just starting them as a flex every week and committing to not messing with it, because the explosive games could be really big. And like the low games might not be great, but they might, as a flex spot, they might be tolerable. And of course, if one of Harvey or Dobbins were unavailable, then the remaining one could go straight to, like, you know, running back 10 or something.
And then just generally speaking, with Dobbins' new expected ADP being somewhere in like the 13th round, are you interested at the new market value?
I might be, but it's a little tough for me to say, because not that I was like hammering Dobbins shares before he signed. But I was taking him pretty regularly because some of these running back picks I just do not respect John, and I was just like, I'm taking Dobbins like ahead of ADP. I don't care, because like he's going to sign with somebody. It's not as if this guy's not going to play, and if he's healthy, he's going to play for somebody in 2025. And we just saw him carry the Chargers offense, so I was getting a good amount of exposure before. But if the 13th, what is it, 156 is the start of the 13th, is that right? So I'll still probably take some Dobbins there. On Underdog's ADP, this would put him right around guys like, guys like Isaac Guerendo, Tank Bigsby, Tyler Algier. I think all of those guys are really good, like staple picks for best ball in that range. But I will say, I don't know. Dobbins does not have as much scalable upside, if only for durability reasons. I think, I hope that not to be too pessimistic, but a guy like Algier, if Robinson were to miss time, he can take 20 carries, no question, all year. Bigsby, I don't think he's as good as Algier, and I don't know what we'll see about him. But he, of course, he's got some ability, and he's a good power runner, and he's got a role with the Jags. I don't really see him scaling up as much as Algier, but I'll put Algier at the front of that group because he's the most durable and he has the most easily projected upside if reps were to become available in the Falcons offense. But I wouldn't want to pursue any of those guys too much over the other, because it could be one of those things where it's just, the guy who stays healthy is the right pick.
No, exactly. So that's a good summation of those running backs in that particular tier. Let's get the other free agent running back veteran signing with a lot of knee injury history, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Nick Chubb going to Houston. Did that strike you as a little bit unexpected that Houston would do that? Is it signal at all that they go through OTAs a little bit, and obviously they got Joe Mixon, but they have Dameon Pierce too. They drafted Woody Marks, a guy that I was kind of in on it as a late draft type of target in best ball. Is it a bit of like a sign that Houston isn't loving what they're seeing from Marks, and therefore like wanted a bit of more insurance there? Or is this just like getting another solid rep but behind Joe Mixon? Like what was your read on Houston being the ones that grabbed Nick Chubb?
I think it's the last thing that you said there. Houston is serious about contending, or they're doing the best too. They are setting the expectations on themselves that they do. And DeMeco Ryans is a culture guy. He's a football guy. He it's important to him to kind of like build a very football obsessive and like competition obsessive culture. And Nick Chubb is a winner. Nick Chubb in a the weight room, in practice, he sets an example for people. Like he's him and like Derrick Henry do kind of like Jerry Rice level workouts. And if you are a running back, especially, or just a football player playing for the Texans, and you see a guy like that, you're gonna change your whole day to try to not look as bad as you are now. But Chubb, I don't think, is a serious candidate to play a regular role in this offense. I kind of hope I'm wrong in the sense that I hope there's no reason to worry about Chubb's injury history. The broken foot is the newest thing, and I have no idea what to make of that. The knee is, of course, very concerning. The long history of his knees is concerning. But if he is kind of back, and I guess a guy who works like him might be able to pull off the superhuman, stunts necessary to do that. We know who he is if he's that, and that's a player who plays. What I don't know is whether that would be, if he would be compelling enough to like steal from Mixon, or if it would be more like Mixon gets as much work as he can until whatever he sprains his ankle, and then we go to Chubb. But I don't think Chubb is a threat to Marks in that he'll take carries from Marks if there were carries ever available to Marks otherwise, but he won't take the passing down reps from Marks. And that was always Marks's main upside trait. Like the late career Jerick McKinnon with the Chiefs, I think, is really like Marks's floor. He should be able to be a pretty compelling pass catching option as a running back. And particularly if Mixon were to miss time, I think Marks definitely takes all the passing down snaps. But if Mixon were to miss time, Chubb could take. Well, Dameon Pierce, I don't know what's going on. Maybe they trade him for like a sixth or something. But if Chubb is healthy, Pierce just doesn't play at that point, and
Right.
I don't know how he fits in exactly, but it wouldn't be by taking reps from Chubb.
No, I don't think so either. So as long as Chubb is healthy, like he'll just kind of like help take on some of those carries. Um, when it comes to Mixon, even before this signing, he's someone that I've been not touching with a 10-foot pole.
I think
As
that was a
far
good
as
call.
I mean, last year it was, it not to like toot my own horn, but like it worked out like up until the playoffs, obviously. But he was really, really productive. I thought he looked a lot faster. There's a lot more burst to
Yeah.
his game, and I want to say, let's see, okay, so he had 7 100-yard rushing games last year. Before that, in his last 5 seasons, he had 6 combined 100-yard seasons. So like there was almost, I almost want to say there's like a little bit of flukiness within that. He had a bunch of long runs. He had more 20-yard runs last year than he did in the previous 2 years combined, equaled the amount of 40-yard rushes as well. So I think that last year was the time to get in. This is the time to be out a year early, in my opinion, when it comes to Mixon.
I will say for Mixon though, my concern with him at this point, as someone who took plenty of shares before the Chubb signing, my concern at this point is I may be overpaid. I'm not worried that Mixon's going to be like a dud this year, especially because that part of the ADP running back wise is it's not enticing to me, at least. As I love Chuba Hubbard, I was definitely taking a lot last year, but I don't want to take him at this price now. I could easily be wrong. I still think he is actually good. It's just I think I don't know. There's other guys that I just trust a little more and are cheaper yet, and so I tended to always go to the Travian Henderson, Alvin Kamara, Kinshawn Judkins part of that ADP, and in that part of it, I definitely do like Mixon again. It's just in the meantime, the problem is there's let's see, there's like at least a half of a round between Mixon and Henderson on underdog, and Judkins is back. Let's see. 19 picks later than Mixon. So if the option is Mixon at 55 or Judkins at 74, I'm taking Judkins like 8 times out of 10 at least.
Yeah, that's my problem with it. I feel like the 5th round has been just kind of a tough part to be drafting a running back, and like you said, I'm more attuned to shop in the tier that has Judkins, Kamara, Henderson, and yeah, in Chuba's case. It was great to get him where he was drafted last year. Totally different discussion now that he's like a 6th round type of guy instead. But yeah, we'll see how much the market freaks out one way or the other in regards to Mixon. I don't see him falling like too much, like maybe half a round. So he's more like clustered within these guys instead of like clearly ahead of them, like right, like where him and Kenneth Walker would be like the only running backs that usually go in the 5th round. I think that he could be lumped in with that crop of 6th round type of running backs.
Yeah, sorry, real quickly. I meant to say, I think Mixon is going to be their main running back and workhorse, generally a 3-down player. But the other reason other than the culture that they signed Chubb is that they saw how the offense tanks without Mixon, and Mixon can get hurt. So they're like, okay, we have to make it such that if Mixon gets hurt, we don't have our whole season wiped out by it.
No, exactly. Like they really stumbled over the finish line last year. Obviously, got the win in the first round of the playoffs, but the Chargers are really good at losing in the first round of the playoffs, also. So, not going to give them too much credit for that one. Before we get into the meat and potatoes of today's show, which is the Pittsburgh Steelers and DK Metcalf, do have a message from our friends at Circa. The Ultimate Fantasy Football Draft can only take place in Las Vegas. Circa Resort and Casino wants to bring your whole league to Vegas with the Ultimate Fantasy Football Experience giveaway. The winner brings your 12-person league for a 2-night stay at Circa Resort and have your draft at a cabana at Stadium Swim. Plus, limo transportation to and from the airport, a welcome party at Legacy Club, a booth at the world's largest sports book, and more. There's no better place to draft than Circa. 21 and up, go to circalasvegas.com for more information. Again, that's circalasvegas.com. All right, onward. We are talking about the Steelers, and we are going to kind of jump things off by focusing in on one DK Metcalf, the big signing for them this offseason, other than, of course, Aaron Rodgers, who signed just hours after we recorded last week's episode. So now it becomes apparent that the Steelers have we think a more credible offense to be working with this year, given the quarterback situation. You know, if they were rolling out Mason Rudolph, it'd be, I don't know why they would even bother throwing it. And I would be more confused still as to why they felt the need to bring in DK Metcalf. But now he is in Pittsburgh and he has a legitimate quarterback. He kind of takes over one of the boundary spots as the X receiver there. There's not a lot of other like viable pass catchers in this offense, especially now that George Pickens is gone. You're looking at Robert Woods, Calvin Austin, Roman Wilson, Scotty Miller as the next guys in this particular tier. So Metcalf at his best is probably a guy who's drawing like, between 110, 120, maybe 125 targets. You don't want to kind of like miscast him and like overdo it with the targets. You want to like make the targets that you do get to him count deeper down the field. But how do you square that with the Pittsburgh offense?
I've seen, I've seen some writing. Maybe Ben Solak referred to DK Metcalf as one of the less precise route runners in the league, and there's these concerns about Rodgers not liking to use play action as much as the Steelers and Arthur Smith like to use play action, raising concerns that these guys basically aren't compatible together and with the scheme that they're playing in. And those concerns, there's definitely something to them. The worst case scenario, I guess, could be true, but I don't get that despairing about it, and for fantasy football reasons, someone like Ben Solak is like a football film writing guy,
Mm-hmm.
If the question instead was phrased as like, do you think Metcalf is going to get his targets? Do you think he's going to catch a few bombs, get a few touchdowns? It'd be like, oh, well, yeah, I suppose so. But they'll have like a bad real life offense, and like we don't care about that part so much. We just need the stats to accumulate, and Metcalf on that team definitely dictates a massive target share. It's just clear. There's, even if he's not that good, it's still clear. So if I don't know, if the Steelers all of a sudden added Brandon Ayuk or something crazy like that, maybe I'd back off that assumption. But in the meantime, the team's wide receiver coach just said that Calvin Austin is their clear wide receiver too. He's 5'7", right? He's like 5'7",
Yeah.
170 or something like that. So we'll see how that goes. I think they have the reality is the Steelers have to run the ball too much. Even if Austin's a feisty blocker, they run the ball against too much like jumbo personnel to have Austin playing a true starter snap count. Like if Austin plays more than something like 600 snaps this year, he'd be a great fantasy value at his current price. But there's a reason why it's not easy to project that. And so if sometimes that wide receiver 2 rep needs to be Pittsburgh demands of the play, but can't draw targets as well as Austin, then that it falls on maybe Freiermuth a little bit too, Jaylen Warren, I suppose you could say. But as far as the receivers go, it's Metcalf that it falls on. Maybe Roman Wilson turns out to be better than we're expecting. I guess I would be surprised if Wilson was like a total dud. It's not that rare for some receivers to end up a little bit late arriving, or just sort of not quite as good as you expected them to be. But to this point, he's been kind of a zero. And if he can't press a guy like Calvin Austin for playing time, then it doesn't look so great. But yeah, I think Wilson either way ends up being like a decoy more than a target. And that's an interesting thing to me personally, trying to imagine a 2 wide, because it's going to be Freiermuth in Washington most of the time, and you can maybe use Roman Wilson as a decoy for DK Metcalf. DK Metcalf is normally the one stuck with the decoy work, is why I find that interesting to think about, because as sloppy as a route runner as he might be, as bad as Rodgers might be in general, or with play action in particular, it's like Metcalf might get upwards of like 30% of their targets with all of the scheming details going toward creating a funnel toward him. So to make it as efficient of a setup as possible, to create as much big play, create as much room on the field for Metcalf to just, express the catch radius and deep speed that he has. Because sloppy route runner or not, questionable hands or not, if the defense doesn't have someone on Metcalf, he's just gone. He's just way too freakishly fast and strong, and he'll clobber people if he needs to. You need a couple tacklers around him, or you risk that, just the big play.
So that target share detail, like there is precedent for that, potentially in this offense. Like it's not going to be, I don't know. It was tricky to kind of parse out the passing splits for this Steelers team, because like if you just do the entirety of last season, they were bottom 5 in pass play percentage, and I think that's generally about where Arthur Smith likes to be, just around 52%. But later on in the season, they were throwing it a lot more, and obviously that was with Russell Wilson at quarterback, and they were trailing a lot more often. But my point being that on average, last year, George Pickens did average a 27% target share. So DK Metcalf, like 30% is, certainly within that realm of possibility. And things will look different as far as like the outputs go when you're talking about 30% of the targets. We're going to see probably like a little bit of a lower ADOT, but the catches should come up. So like somehow, this sets up to where he's a little bit more interesting in PPR maybe than he used to be.
It could be. The only thing that keeps me from getting too optimistic about that is, as you already said, that the Steelers won't throw the ball much if they have the choice in the matter. And I guess we got to keep an eye on the TJ Watt thing as far as that goes. I make the predictions, that I have for Metcalf in part based on the projections that I have for the Steelers defense. If the Steelers defense gets worse, I guess then maybe they do need to throw the ball more than they would like to. And that would be a way for Metcalf to kind of have the upside result at all the categories. Like he could, I guess, if the Steelers have to throw the ball more than they want to, he could catch something like, I don't know, 90 passes or whatever. And even if it's sloppy, even if there's kind of a low catch rate, I do think the yards per target and the touchdowns will occur for Metcalf. I think it's just, even if he's basically a bad wide receiver in terms of doing wide receiver stuff, he's so freakishly, the catch radius, the speed, the strength. It's just not practical to expect a defense, even when it's playing well, to always keep something like that under wraps. And it's more just that in real life, Metcalf sometimes will not make a route the right way, not catch a ball, and they got a punt and they end up 10 points down, whereas like they could have, kept the drive going and maybe keep the game closer if he had caught it, but they still get that next shot usually. And then if it's kind of like a garbage time situation, he'll get the catch the next time.
Yeah. And yeah, I think it's easy to forget just because Metcalf has been around so long. He's a rookie in 2019. He's still just 27. Like he doesn't turn 28 until December. Like he's still absolutely in his prime. So, this particular setup with the kind of just sheer lack of weaponry around him, it's really going to just kind of come down to how much he can mesh with Rodgers, because I think the opportunities are about as locked in as anybody who's going in that kind of same general range of the ADP. We do have a quick question from our guy Michael with the super chat. Much appreciated. Thanks, there, Michael. All right, so he is in a Superflex PPR dynasty, talking about a pretty massive shakeup of a trade here, where he would be giving away Drake May, Derrick Henry, Jameson Williams, Jerry Jeudy, and Pop Douglas for Jalen Hurts, James Cook, and Nico Collins. Feels like a lot of ammo to be Giving
In super
away.
flex, I guess you are getting Hurts back. The Henry, I guess you got to try to make Henry be for Collins more or less, and then Cook for JMO and Judy. I'm not really considering Douglas. I'm not really considering Douglas substantial capital in this. I don't know. I guess you could pitch this as a win now move because, well, I don't know. Taking a step back at like losing Henry at running back is not good for competing right now. So if it's a very aggressive kind of like all in kind of thing, I could see it. But I guess in that sense, I would need that running back to not be Henry. It would have to be somebody who just, point blank doesn't do as much this year as we expect Henry to. I don't know. If you're a rebuilding team, I definitely wouldn't do it. And if your second quarterback is Bryce Young, I kind of would put that team in that category. If moving May leaves you with Young, I don't know. Maybe I'm reading this wrong.
I mean, I would try to switch in Young for Drake May.
At the very least,
they'll bite.
Yeah, because giving away May is a lot in my opinion. Maybe I should mention that, and maybe I'm incorrect for being this way, but I have really, really high expectations for Drake May, and I basically expect May to be more valuable than Hurts as soon as 2 years from now, and so I guess that's the way I'd put it. It's if you're okay with the possibility of the quarterback you're acquiring in this case kind of becoming less valuable as soon as like 2 years from now, if that makes sense, then it makes sense to do it if you feel like you're winning or getting closer to a win now kind of build in the process, and if you don't need the running back points that Henry would otherwise give you to stay in the win now category. But giving up Henry, that makes it seem difficult to me to make all those pieces fit exactly that way. I like to stay away from trades that seem unclear to me, where I'm like, they look okay, but I don't know what way it's going to go. I like to have a specific expectation that it'll go a certain way for me.
Yeah, my brain is a little bit not high powered enough to like go through all the permutations of this particular. I mean, there's so many pieces, in play in this. I mean, you're almost like swapping rosters to an extent, or like swapping cores.
Yeah, I would probably just try to, if anything, I'd maybe try to look at another team to see if they have a better win now kind of thing that they could offer you.
Yeah, I think that is fair. Once again, much appreciated.
Thanks a lot, Michael.
Michael, frequent viewer of our live streams. All right. So finishing off the Metcalf detail before unpacking the sort of rest of this offense. So there's a ton of receivers that go in this particular round, like mid to late fourth into the fifth. Scaling it to that, so starting at the beginning of the fourth round and working our way down. So you got Xavier Worthy. This is underdog ADP most recently. Xavier Worthy, Ted McMillan, DJ Moore, Jameson Williams, a couple spots back at 43, Travis Hunter, 44, DK Metcalf, 45, Devontae Smith, 46, and then Cortland Sutton, 48. So again, I think that this is we've talked about this a lot on the show. Just like this is a particular tier that you probably just want to diversify more than just like pick one guy from it. But if you're kind of given the bulk of these options available to you, how are you approaching it? Like out of 10 drafts, if like Metcalf and say 2 or 3 more of these guys are available to you, how often are you ending up with DK?
I like Metcalf more than most of those guys, even if Worthy was at the same ADP spot, if McMillan was at the same ADP spot as Metcalf, I'd prefer Metcalf. So if Metcalf's cheaper, it's definitely an easy call for me. I also don't see a reason to put Jameson Williams or Travis Hunter ahead of DK Metcalf. It's DJ Moore in that range that I'm probably taking over Metcalf. I don't know, not. I'd like to say something like 6 times out of 10. Real cop out kind of way to handle it if available. Devontae Smith, I'll definitely think about taking. I feel like he's got a pretty huge upside scenario if we, not that anyone wants to think about stuff like this, but if AJ Brown were to roll an ankle or something, then if Smith had the fantasy playoffs as the wide receiver one for the Eagles, he could be a league winner in that scheduling sense. But the problem otherwise is I also like other receivers later than the ones that were the McMillan Hunter types, and it just seems like that's a bad area of the wide receiver ADP to me personally.
It's hard to find great values because it's weird. Like you're sort of just like running out of like the top 15 or so receivers, and everything else is starts to become like a little bit more up for negotiation and discussion as to like how we should actually be valuing these guys. But definitely to me, the landmine picks in this particular range are probably Jameson Williams and Travis Hunter. And like I'm definitely more attuned to go after DK Metcalf. And I think after kind of hearing your analysis further on it and just separating like how ugly I think the Pittsburgh offense might be from the reality of the fact that he's going to get about a third of the targets from Aaron Rodgers as opposed to Mason Rudolph, like you can kind of hold your nose and still end up feeling like pretty good about where Metcalf ends up. And I think that we could look at this group after the season and be like, what were we thinking? Why were we taking Tet McMillan over DK Metcalf by almost half a round?
Yeah, on underdog, this doesn't matter because you have to take wide receivers so constantly anyway that it's not worth being like, I'll pass on this solid wide receiver value in this round because I think this other guy in the next round is a better value. Like you sometimes got to take both of them or else you still get burned with your wide receiver depth. So what I'll probably be the main reason otherwise though to not take Metcalf at this price, in my opinion, is that guys like Jaylen Waddle, Calvin Ridley, Chris Olave go later, and Roma Dunze, Chris Godwin, I'll include them in this group. Those are guys that I think could produce in the same realm as Metcalf and all these alternatives of other than Metcalf that we might be talking about. And those guys go quite a bit later. In Waddle's case, if Tyreek Hill were to miss time, we're back to 1,300-yard Waddle. So I think, and then in Ridley's case, it's just like there's no target competition. So those guys have, for me, similar projections to the guys going like almost 2 rounds earlier than them. But again, because if you're particularly on underdog, that generally means you just got to take both. Because if you try to go bargain, if you try to go cheap at receiver, they usually punish you for that.
Yes, like generally speaking, like if you're not pretty happy with what your starting receiver room could look like after the 6th round, like then you're gonna have to start thinking about like, okay, I'm gonna need Darnell Mooney to produce like a starter every single week. I'm gonna need Jacoby Myers to do that every single week. Jaden Reed, Matthew Golden, Stephon Diggs, Khalil Shakir. So like you definitely want to like kind of feel comfortable about your receiver room by the time you get through like the 6th round. And like you said, there are some interesting guys available there, like Ridley, Olave, and Waddle that are going to be available to drafters after the likes of Metcalf and company. Moving on to like the other kind of tricky part of the equation to figure out for the Steelers, and feels like it's same but different. The running back room. I think we already see like the 2 camps forming, the team Jaylen Warren and team Caleb Johnson. Caleb Johnson ADP checking in at 75. Jaylen Warren going at pick 99, trending up a little bit in the ADP, but still considerably later than the rookie here. So how's this one going to shake out, and who's the right pick between the 2 of them at ADP?
Well, at the risk of looking like the idiot that I am, I will say that Caleb Johnson going ahead of Jaylen Warren makes no sense at all. And Jaylen Warren is objectively the preferable pick, even at the same price, let alone with Warren being so much cheaper than Johnson. It's clear, I think, why the market is shaped up this way, and the reasons are not good for justifying either player's price, and in Warren's sense, it's not good, and it's not a good justification that he's too cheap, basically. But there was a lot of internet hype about Kaleb Johnson being like, I don't know, Adrian Peterson or something. Like they were saying, like he's so much better than Judkins. He's like he should go in the first round. And I think Kaleb Johnson's a good prospect. I think it was a solid selection by the Steelers in the third round. But the hope, the prophecy for all the hype about what he was getting talked about with people posting highlights on Twitter, all spring. Like that stuff was just a fantasy, in my opinion. And those sentiments aren't fully gone. They linger a little bit because those are the dead enders of the prophecy. They're holding on, even though the evidence is piling up that it doesn't make any sense. They're like, yeah, well, we're in a cult for a reason, buddy. We are not deterred. And eventually, like the point totals, the playing time, the snaps, the details like that will come up, and it'll quietly like fade a little bit. But Jaylen Warren is the pass blocker of the two, and he's the receiver of the two. Kaleb Johnson is not guaranteed to even be the short yardage guy of the two. Kaleb Johnson's the better big play threat of the two. I think you can say that. And I think Johnson has upside as a pass catcher, but it's probably in the future rather than now. And in the meantime, I mean, for what it's worth, Lance Zierlein of NFL.com said in Kaleb Johnson's draft profile that he's point blank unlikely to be trusted with pass blocking duties early in his career. I didn't have access to enough Iowa tape to know specifically what he's basing that on, but Lance Zierlein has enough sources. He's tight enough with the coach community that you can take it as kind of a consensus opinion. And we know Jaylen Warren is one of the best both blitz pickup and pass catching running backs in the NFL. Warren's getting the passing down snaps. It doesn't matter if Kaleb Johnson someday turns out to be good at it. Warren's one of the best now. So the only way Johnson, in my opinion, can catch Jaylen Warren's projection, catch Jaylen Warren's fantasy points is with rushing touchdowns. And he could. Kaleb Johnson should be a good pure runner at the very least. And he might even be a good starter in general someday. But one of the reasons I was lower on him than the people who were hyping him the most is that even though he's a big running back, Kaleb Johnson at 6'1", 224 can take a lot of punishment. But even as a running back that big, he doesn't run with that much power. And it's not because he's not physically strong. It's because his build is wrong. His gait, the way that he runs is wrong for generating the amount of anchor that you need to express that power. It's it's like in baseball, there's the raw power variable, right? But then there's the in-game power variable, the one you actually care about, the one that actually results in home runs. And Kaleb Johnson, I'm not convinced has the in-game power. I think he's like clearly a physically strong running back, and he can take a lot of abuse, but I don't think he dishes a whole lot out. And being a tall, anchor lacking running back is not good for interior or short yardage running. It's easier for you to lose your feet because someone lower than you kind of just knocks them out from under you. It's easier to get clotheslined. It's harder to hide, and it's harder to generate, to brace the shock that you're going to take and explode against it and break through it. It's hard to do that when you're built the way and when you run the way that Kaleb Johnson is and does. So I guess I will say if Jaylen Warren were to miss time, then Kaleb Johnson is a pretty easy running back 2 type in fantasy. So it's not as if he has no place in the ADP. I just think basically Jaylen Warren and Kaleb Johnson should switch spots in the ADP.
So with Najee Harris being gone, he's a guy that averaged over 250 carries each of the last few years. Now Najee Harris is gone. Like that opens up, a huge chunk of carries in this offense. And, in Jaylen Warren's case, he had always been like, the second fiddle as far as the carries were concerned. And you always brought up the good point that Najee Harris was taking on a lot of the grunt work, like the short yardage stuff that wasn't going to portend a particularly high yards per carry figure, whereas, Warren would kind of come in when defense a little bit more tenderized or facing lighter boxes. And therefore, we saw some really strong production, particularly in 2023 when he ran for almost 800 yards on 150 carries. Do we see, Warren's basically what I want to know from your perspective is how do those like 250 or so carries get redistributed between Caleb Johnson and Jaylen Warren? How much could Warren theoretically scale up?
It's I think it's one of those things that could go a couple ways at least. Warren may well prove to be kind of too smallish to take on a workload quite as big as Najee Harris did, but I think there's a chance that he can kind of just take most of it, and or at least more than the Caleb Johnson fantasy investors would like him to take. I think we saw Warren be a workhorse in college, right? So we saw him play as a workhorse for Oklahoma State, and before that Utah State, and he held up fine, which you would expect that because he's built perfectly to take on not punishment. That's not the right word, because the whole thing is like he largely avoids the punishment by being built the way that Jaylen Warren is. He has that really easy natural anchor, and then you add to it his motor, the fact that he's physically strong. He's a tough tackle, and he's built, I think, more for volume than people expect. I think Pittsburgh using him as a passing down guy, it's like sorry to bother everybody with more baseball analogies, but it's just the same as taking like this guy's a starter normally, but we're playing him out of the pen because we're loaded with our starters. And they had basically Jaylen Warren playing out of the bullpen while they had Najee Harris there. But Jaylen Warren did not play out of the bullpen in college. He doesn't need to do it. It was just the way they chose to run things at the time. So particularly if Caleb Johnson is giving the team cause for concern in blitz pickup or short yardage or between the guards, between the tackles kind of running, I do think they're prepared to give Warren some big workloads because he's handled it before and he wants it. He definitely has the temperament for it.
I think so too. So I think, like you said, that you could argue that these ADPs should be flipped between the two of them, with Warren going closer to the 7th round and Caleb Johnson going more so in the 9th. So I think have a pretty good idea of your expectations for Caleb Johnson, and probably not drafting him a ton at the current
Zero
ADP.
shares so far, John.
Yeah, I think similar boat for me. But in Warren's case, he's kind of on a bit of an ADP island in his own right, because it seems like Cam Scatterbu is moving up in the ADP. You can see him sneak into the 8th round a little bit more now, and Jordan Mason, I think, is starting to go ahead of Jaylen Warren now as well. But I like getting shares of all three, and if Warren ends up being the cheapest of those three,
I like that range of
no
the running back
qualms.
ADP. I think as much as I like to get a guy like Keyshawn Judkins at 74-ish, I think Tony Pollard's clearly one of the more stable values in the ADP right now. I think the Titans are going to run a lot, and they showed last year they're going to give Pollard 20 carry opportunities even when Tyjae Spears is healthy. Pacheco, if he's the starter and he's healthy, et cetera, et cetera. I like Mason, I like Scatterbu. So yeah, I think that's and ETN right after them. So this is a good spot to be targeting. I guess you'd say maybe you're running back 3 and later.
Yeah, and I think, but
or 2 if you're going 0 running back or whatever.
Right. So any of like the Scatterbu, Warren, Jordan Mason, like I'm happy to draft any of those 3 at their current ADP. Let's look a little bit further into the Steelers passing game. So again, obviously, DK Metcalf is going to be soaking up a lot of the targets here. No pass catcher for Pittsburgh goes. But okay, so Metcalf, ADP 45.5. Pat Freiermuth is the next pass catcher in Pittsburgh that gets drafted all the way down at pick 165.
Oh my God. That's funny. That is, it's probably right on the mark though, honestly. I mean, the Steelers passing game, somebody might wonder, like, how could they possibly throw it to Metcalf that much of the time? And it's not so much, it's not so much that they're trying to get him the ball that much. It's just that they almost leave themselves no other way to go about it, and they leave the defense similarly no other way to defend it other than kind of playing chicken with this tension between trying to go big personnel and draw in defensive big personnel, and then go to the run game with really determined volume, power running. You do that enough, the defense has to respond with power personnel of their own, and then at that point, you just need Metcalf to have the safety that's doubling him almost all the time to step just a couple, take a few steps toward the run that he's thinking about, the run game setup that he's thinking about. Because that safety, he's going to want to take a shot at that running back after he sees the play like 5 or 6 times. They're going to start looking for that hit. And that's when Metcalf just becomes too big, too fast again, And it's just, they do those two things and nothing else, such that it's just they try to make it like a coin flip every play for the defense, and they hope the defense guesses the wrong side, guesses the run when it's instead going to Metcalf, guesses it's Metcalf when it's going to the run. That's just how they're going to play it. And there really might not be room for anything else to grow other than Metcalf. Freiermuth, we've seen, I think, that he's a good tight end, and if he was in an offense that threw the ball more and better, he could be a really good fantasy tight end, but not with the Steelers. I don't really see how anyway. He's more just kind of like a steady backup type, just a stabilizer pick in best ball.
So how certain are you that what the Steelers have right now on their depth chart is the one that we're going to see in week 1? Or do you think that there's any truth to like the rumors that, maybe Jonnu Smith or Kyle Pitts?
God, I hope not. That would be the worst. That would be the absolute worst. Please, I need to stop hearing that. Please never mention that to me. But yeah, I really hope the Jonnu thing is just the Miami GM being, insert whatever word you'd like. When Jonnu was like, I'd like a raise, please. Like, oh yeah, you're asking for a raise? How do you like playing? You like playing with Arthur Smith? You want to do that again? You want to go? How do you like Pittsburgh? You ever going to Pittsburgh? We'll send you to Pittsburgh if you ask for more money. Don't ask for more money. I'm hoping that's what's going on. And I'm hoping that the Steelers thing was just a threat, we're gonna, sending McNulty to the what was it, the boat?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's like that's just them sending McNulty to the boat. But they did send McNulty to the boat, so who knows? Okay. But yeah, if Jonnu goes to Pittsburgh, he just screws up everything for Freiermuth and vice versa. And it would be a real shame for them and Darnell Washington, who's too good to be a T3.
Yeah, basically the Steelers would be like the closest thing to like a triple option academy offense for in the NFL. Like they'd just be.
It is.
They try to do like one wide receiver,
Stephen Hill type scenes.
Yeah. So I don't see them doing that. I mean, I think they probably need to somehow find a way to get another receiver in the door. We've talked about Amari Cooper a decent bit. I feel like he would make some sense. I mean, he can definitely still play. I really don't care.
They
about
really might not add anyone, and I know it is insane, and I know additionally it sounds insane, but I bet they're gonna rationalize that Robert Woods is that guy, because I mean, Robert Woods is a good fit for their culture. Admittedly, like he's a really tenacious player. He'll block like crazy. That's something that they value quite a bit. He'll be more productive for them as a wide receiver too than like Van Jefferson was or whatever. But yeah, between that and running so much too tight end, because Darnell Washington he's going to play like 400 snaps or something, or at least. And if they're winning as much as if they have as much leads as they would like, Washington plays more the more that's the case, because they're running out more clock with the run game. So I could see them really trying to be cheap about this, and then more so. I don't know, but you're right though. A guy like Cooper is totally in play. I just mean to say, and maybe this is just wishful thinking, but I kind of hope Cooper would go somewhere else, because it would just be kind of like that's almost just like retiring for him to go to Pittsburgh.
Yeah, like we wouldn't get the best out of him. Like I think when we were talking about Detroit the other week, it was like that would make some sense. That would
make a lot of sense. Do it. Whatever was that, Holmes? Holmes, get it done.
There we go. Yeah, I think as far as like 18th round, 17th round type of guys, I think you could do worse than throwing a dart on Cooper before he signs somewhere, and then his ADP ends up going up. Do you have interest in either Calvin Austin or Roman Wilson? We've kind of laid out this entire offense at this point. Both these guys can be had at the very end
Best
of
ball,
drafts.
best
Mhm.
ball only. But yeah, in best ball, I feel like they fit the profile for the kind of pick you want to make because, especially Austin, I suppose, especially if Austin slips a little past ADP. Like if you can get, I suppose these days might be gone with that wide receiver coach saying what he did, but I feel like I sometimes saw Austin going like undrafted almost, maybe, or at least not earlier than the 17th or something like that. And I think he's close to the ideal pick in that part, not in the upside sense. I don't think Austin's going to be a guy who can catch, I don't think he can catch 60 passes for 900 yards, but I think he could give you like 700 yards and maybe like a rushing touchdown or something weird like that makes him kind of just a nice like a glue guy pick that gives you a little a helpful 12 points on a week where your other guys just don't show up, and it just gives you a little bit of a boost for basically for free. And Austin, he's going to get targets when he's on the field, because I know the wide receiver coach said he's a good blocker, but that's not why he's on the field. When he's on the field, it's because he's running, he's making somebody chase him, or he's getting the ball. So I like Austin in that sense. When I'm less Wilson, I think there's a case for taking him in the 18th round, like sometimes. I don't know what kind, maybe let's say like 8 to 10% of share, 8 to 10% share exposure rate, but it's very easy for him to be kind of a zero again, because as much as I just kind of alluded to Calvin Austin maybe being a decoy sometimes, Roman Wilson will be a decoy even more often, and we don't even know how many snaps he's going to play. So if Roman Wilson only plays 500 snaps and he's one of the most decoy prone route runners in the league in that sample, he could go 500. He could do like a, what was that guy's name? Jaylen Guyton. He could have like a Jaylen Guyton kind of thing where he's like just 700 snaps, 40 targets, that kind of nonsense.
Volume is king, baby, until it isn't. Then so I think I'm gonna grab some Calvin Austin. I like the big playability that he's got, like the kind of make you miss.
He's
and then
faster than Wilson, I think, right?
Yeah.
Like Wilson is very fast and arguably plays faster than his 40 time, but Austin's just straight up burner.
Yeah, no, he was like awesome at Memphis, and I think that this could be his year to do a little something, because even though Metcalf is commanding a third of the targets, that still means that 2/3 are kind of up for grabs there. And if it's clear that Calvin Austin is kind of second on the pecking order, you could
he was
do
a
a
great
lot
pick
worse
last
with your
year
last.
too.
Yeah,
you look at Austin's game logs. He got 17.5 points, half PPR game in week 3. In week 8 he had 18.9. Week 12 he had 15.3, a couple 9+ point games. And I know that doesn't sound, it's not exciting, so it doesn't sound exciting either, but for the rounds that you're picking from, that's a pretty nice stabilizing pick. If you can resist the urge to always chase maximum upside, I think Austin's worth kind of extended exposure really at a price like that.
there you go. And then lastly, I don't want to talk about him too much. Everyone probably has their own opinions formed on him already. And
Will Howard.
Yeah, are we still drafting Will Howard?
In Dynasty, we are. We believe still.
We do. But in Rodgers' case, his ADP, obviously jumps up a good bit in light of the signing. His ADP is 186. So going late, I imagine that will creep up a little bit further. Sam Darnold goes in that same range, and Daniel Jones goes about a round behind Rodgers. So QB 28 is who we're talking about here. So really just kind of a guy for 3 quarterback builds.
Yeah.
I would think, and
not even that exciting as far as that goes, but he should be okay as far as that. I mean, generally for quarterback 3, you just need them to not get benched.
Yeah, you just need them playing every week, and there you have it. But like some people are kind of bringing up the point that Rodgers quietly, for fantasy purposes, had a good season last year, and I think that's true enough. With him throwing 28 touchdowns and almost 4,000 yards, but I don't know. It's a roster construction thing to me. No, not in Pittsburgh. So that's, a bit of a limiting factor. Maybe he's more of like a 23, 24 touchdown type of guy. And so ultimately,
John,
yeah.
I think I would put Rodgers in basically the exact same category that I would Russell Wilson. A guy who throws it 28 times, maybe gets 2 or 3 touchdowns a lot of the time, never does a whole lot more, and whatever that's worth to you, by all means. But yeah, it's just I'd rather have someone like Cam Ward if the price difference isn't much, and I think with Rodgers signing Rodgers' ADP might get closer to Ward, and I guess that's kind of Ward and Darnold. I'm still definitely taking over Rodgers.
Yeah, I think that's correct. Yeah, I'm definitely still drafting a good bit of Ward. I still feel like he's a value where he's going. I need to get a little bit more Geno Smith, but
I can see that too, because he's one of those guys where it's just like if he stays healthy all year, he'll probably be a nice, he'll throw the ball 30 times every week, and that's all you need.
Yeah, and 10 of those will go to Brock Bowers, and that's usually pretty good.
Yes.
But that's going to wrap it up. I think that covers everything Pittsburgh Steelers related for this particular episode. Again, if you're watching on the live stream, look at the bottom of the screen, rotowire.com. Use that code YouTube15. You can also, of course, use that if you're checking us out in podcast form. Also, a big thanks to our friends over at Circa. Check them out over at circalasvegas.com for more information on their ultimate fantasy football giveaway. For Mario Puig, I'm John McKechnie. Thanks for listening.